Welcome to our Wednesday interview. Today we are here with Jillian Marini. She is the Deputy Legal Defender at the Coconino County Legal Defender's Office. Welcome, Jillian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, we're super excited. Jillian also used to be on the board at Sage Home, so she is very familiar with Sage Home, and we're excited to hear from her. So Jillian, something that I'm hoping to bring to this interview is a little bit of an attorney's perspective on kind of what the process is like for parents involved in the child welfare system. Would you mind kind of giving us a little overview of what that might look like?
Yes, so the child welfare system is actually a highly complex system, and I imagine that parents are incredibly overwhelmed at their very first court hearing. Because it's such a complex system, I will just give you a brief overview. So the process usually starts with a child being removed from their parents. At that time, the court is notified and a hearing is set very quickly. At that hearing, a couple of things happen. The first thing is the parents are given a long list of services that the department wants them to participate in order to reunify with their children. And it's just a list. They don't tell them where to go get those services or how to go get those services. Another thing that occurs at the hearing is that the parents have a right to request what's called a temporary custody hearing and ask that their children be returned to them immediately. Those hearings are difficult to win for the parents because the burden of proof for the state is pretty low. So most parents don't opt to request that hearing, and instead they set their case for trial. The trial will occur about 90 days after the time of removal. And in that time period, the parents are supposed to be working on that kind of laundry list of services that DCS has provided to them. Sometimes the parents just decide not to take the case to trial for a number of reasons. Usually it's because they recognize that they need to work on some things before their kids can safely come home to them. But if they do take their case to trial, it may be because they've remedied the circumstances that resulted in their kids being removed in the first place. So within that 90-day period, maybe they got everything in order that they needed to have their kids safely returned to them. And so they want to ask that the judge return the kids. Another reason may be that they disagree with the Department of Child Safety removing their kids in the first place. But whatever reason that may be, they do have a right to take their case to trial. If they win at trial, their kids are returned to them. If they lose at trial, essentially the state gets to have continued custody of the children, and the parents are given more time to participate in services. That time frame varies depending upon the age of the child in question. So if you have a child under the age of 3, parents only have 6 months to complete the services that they need to complete to have their children returned to them. If the child is over the age of 3 at the time of removal, the parents are given 1 year. So as you can imagine, this can be quite a lengthy process. As long as the parents are taking steps towards remedying the issues that caused the child to be removed from them in the first place, the court will typically give them more time to do what they need to do. If they're not, that's when the state can try to terminate their parental rights. And at that point in time, the parents are entitled to have another trial on the termination of their parental rights. And the outcome of that could, of course, mean that they lose rights to their children forever. and their children are free for adoption. So I hope all that makes sense. Do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, I think that does sound like it's a pretty complicated process that varies with the circumstances. So my question is, from your perspective and your experience, what are some of the major barriers that you see parents facing once they kind of enter that legal process?
Yeah, so I practice here in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is, I consider, a quasi-rural county. And one of the major barriers is that kids who are in foster care, who can't go with family members throughout this process, are usually placed very far away. There are not that many foster homes in our small community, and I have children placed as far as 4 hours away from Flagstaff. Also, I have some cases out of Page, Arizona, basically all of Coconino County. So our county is quite large, and that could mean that children are placed even further than I just described, away from their parents. What that means for parents, of course, especially if they have a newborn baby, is that they are very far away from this newborn, which I imagine really hinders the necessary bonding. But also it means that when parents have to visit with their children, visitation could be a day-long process for them. They might be, their transportation might take 4 hours, and then the visit itself will take 4 hours. So as you can imagine, parents are also expected to be completing services, maintaining employment, finding safe and stable housing, all at the same time as participating in these visits with their children. So that places a huge burden on them, especially if they're trying to seek employment. I can only imagine asking employer, twice a week to have significant chunks of time off for the visitations would be really hard, as well as just the time it would take to complete all the other services that DCS is requesting that they complete.
Yeah, so quite a few barriers there. So when you think about Sage Home and kind of what Sage Home's aim is of kind of keeping families together, how can you see Sage Home addressing some of those barriers?
Yeah, so I think Sage Home would really resolve a lot of those issues that I just discussed. Many of my cases are related to substance abuse issues. That's what causes the Department of Child Safety to get involved in the first place. So a lot of parents are struggling with addiction. Sage Home would allow parents to address those addiction issues in a safe environment, alongside, while having their children in their care. And it would be a safe place for the children to be, and it would also allow the parents to have that critical bonding time with the children. It could also reduce travel time. Depending upon the services that Sage Home makes available to parents, it could really centralize those services, so kind of like a one-stop shop. But also, just in terms of treatment goals, Flagstaff does not have many long-term treatment programs to address substance abuse, especially if you believe that parents need more than 28 days to address their substance abuse issues. Really, there are no options here, which again would require them to leave their hometown to go get treatment. Whereas if Sage Home was available to them, they could receive that treatment, remain bonded to their children throughout. And also, I think having their children there would be a really strong motivating factor. A lot of parents tell me that they're just very sad being away from their children and not seeing them. And it makes it hard for them to keep their eye on the prize, which is to be reunified with their family.
Yeah, so really having the ability to do a bunch of services in the same location could take a lot of that pressure and obligations off if Sage Home were around.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Jillian, thank you so much for your insight. I know that there's like a massive rabbit hole we could go down with the legal system, but I think it can be really helpful just to have a little snapshot of what the process is like and what kind of goes into child removal. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks so much, and I look forward to working with you more in the future.